Hello, good afternoon, good morning if you're on the West Coast. But most importantly, welcome to today's dialogue in our Women in Economy series. And I am your host for today. I am Joanna Smith-Ramani. I'm the co-executive director of the Financial Security Program. And if you are with us for the first time or you come to us from the Women in the Economy work and don't know who FSP is, we are a program at the Aspen Institute that focuses deeply, we are obsessed with, you might say, household wealth and ensuring that all Americans not just have real opportunities to build their own personal wealth, but actually do it. And so this series fits in so well. We're in our third of the Women in the Economy series where we're talking to journalists, authors, filmmakers, podcasters, all kinds of creators and other thought leaders to really dig into how would we and how will we redesign our economy so women strive, thrive, can meaningfully and reliably contribute to their families' financial security and wealth, and importantly, and actually necessarily, if you look at the demographics of our country, contribute to our country's thriving and economy. I want to say that we are so inclusive when I say women. So please imagine all of those that self-identify as female and all of those who are allies and want to support us in our thriving and contributions. Um, Give us your questions in the chat. My colleague Heather, who leads this work, but has given me the pleasure and joy of talking with Ai-jen today, will be capturing your questions so that we can get them into the conversation. We will be recording this and we will share this. Let me invite Ai-jen, get on the screen. Let's get it going sooner rather than later. Oh, people are introducing themselves. What a great crowd already. Yes, please throw in who you are, where you're coming from, what you care about. Is there a joyful moment you've had today already? Whatever will give us, as my 16-year-old says, the good vibes, um, to have this be the kind of conversation I know it'll be. Real quick before we get started, Ai-jen, I just want to say some things that I know you know and that I think some of the folks in this call know, but need to be said, have to be stated. Um, Women play an essential role in our economy, like period, facts based on data and evidence, and even more so in these, we're increasingly contributing more. Um, Care supports, which is what we're going to spend some time talking about today. And when we say care, the same way we're being inclusive of women, we're being inclusive of care from the babies in our house to the children to the adults who need care to the older adults, right? And sort of everything in between. Just the way that some people need more support and care, and that's who we're talking about, and the caregivers that provide that in their life. But we need that for the financial security of families and for our economy to actually be prosperous and thrive. And in fact, you see other countries figuring this out, right? Because they are building it in through public policy. It's becoming something that government is much more involved in because of global competition. So this isn't just a nice to have, this is a necessary to do. And I have to tell all of you in the chat who are putting what your names are and where you're from, how lucky I am to be talking to Ai-jen about this. We spoke a handful of years ago on a similar topic. At FSP, we had put out a piece of work, a research piece on the cost of caregiving, both thinking about for households and their financial security, the ones paying for the service or unable to, frankly, and the cost to their family's economic security. And of course, what it means to be a caregiver in this country without the kinds of labor market income, benefits, supports, connectivity to be successful in your chosen path. And we had a chance to talk then, and it's been some amount of years, and maybe some things have gotten better and some things have got worse. We'll get into it. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but let you say hi, and then I'm just gonna get us going.
Great. Well, hi, everybody, and I'm so happy to be doing this with you, Joanna. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today for this really important conversation, and we're going to try to keep the space of hope
Yeah.
alive here.
That's right. I was telling Ai-jen, I don't even know why I'm telling all of you this, but in case I go like this, I just got back from a family vacation where I was wearing Minnie Mouse ears for the whole time, so you can probably guess where I was. And I keep thinking they're there. Um, but so I'm sorry if I do this, but partly what that gave me was like 4 intensive days away from the world full of magic and joy. And I'm not going to let it go away.
Yeah.
I think when you and I got on this call to start it off, I said, how are you doing? And you're like, protecting my peace. Um, and for me, part of protecting peace is feeling like I'm around people that want change and want to do it right and want to do it in ways that include everyone. And so I'm
Yeah.
bringing my joy and my peace into this conversation.
Love
Um,
it.
Aijen, let's just start with some of the basics. Like when you talk about the care economy, like you do all day long, what do you mean by it? Like size of it, what's in it, how does it interact with the U.S. economy? Just like help us get out of our siloed head of thinking this has to do just with me and my child or me and my parent.
Yeah, it really is quite vast. It's a vast part of our economy and our lives, frankly. It's all of the activity that is related to caring for young children, for all of us, really, from the time we're born to the time that we die. We need care at different moments and at different levels. So we typically think about childcare, right?
Yeah,
And those 0 to 5 years being so essential, whether it's happening in the home-based context or you're going to a center, that child having access to childcare is such an essential enabler for so many women to participate in the workforce, but also just for everyone. If you have kids, you need care.
yeah, you
Um,
do.
that's
Simply
a
put,
big
yeah.
part of the care economy. There's also the part of the care economy that's about providing supports to people with disabilities at every stage of life to enable them to have full lives, going to school, participating in the workforce, living well in the community. Um, and then also, as we age, we need more assistance. And sometimes it's because we have a chronic illness like dementia, and other times it's because we have limited mobility or we are becoming more frail and just need a little bit more supports. So all of that activity, from childcare to direct care at the end of life, is considered part of the care economy. And it's done by family members. It's also done by neighbors and friends. It's also done by professionals. And there are somewhere around 9 million professionals who work inside the care economy, providing caregiving services of different sorts.
And has there been a good way, again, if we're talking about this isn't a nice to have, this is a part of an economic driver
Yeah.
of our country and a contributor to it too, because these are jobs. Has there been a way to size it, to financially size the contributions or the risk of not having it? Or how do you think of sort of the math of it all?
Well, Pivotal Ventures and McKinsey, I think, tried to quantify the economic activity in the care economy, and I think they put it at about $684 billion in
Wow.
activity per year just in the US. So that's significant. It's larger than the entire pharmaceutical industry. It is significant. And so this is really not to be underestimated. And in fact, workforces that exist in the care economy, like the direct care workforce that supports older adults and people with disabilities. These are some of the fastest growing workforces in our entire job market because of the demand. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? We have baby boomers are aging, we're all living longer.
Yep.
And so our lifespans have extended, which also means we'll need more care for longer. More of us, right, will need more care for longer. And then these are jobs that can't be outsourced and are not going to be automated, at least anytime soon. We're still awaiting anxiously the robot that can help us care for our
Yep.
parents. But
What
it's
was it, Rosie in the Jetsons? I'm trying to remember the
right,
name.
right, right, exactly. That's right. We're
Yeah.
pretty far from Rosie at this
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
And people in the membership of the National Domestic Workers Alliance will tell you that Rosie will not replace
Right.
the emotional human contact and attention that only humans can offer in the care context. So yeah, it's a really rapidly growing part of our economic lives in this country, and deeply underinvested in. we have deeply undervalued and taken for granted so much of what happens, and frankly assumed that many women will just take up the mantle of all of the caregiving responsibilities and working outside the home to make ends meet. And so this is gets to the heart of the challenge in terms of being able to build wealth.
Right. Well, that's right, because um, if you just think about this sort of, how am I trying to say this? The like mental load
Yeah,
of trying to both either manage a set of folks giving the care for you because you
yeah,
were working, and then doing your full-time job, which contributes to our economy in really important ways, not just like in numbers, but women and other folks who might end up having to be caregivers or who are so distracted are also scientists discovering cures for vaccine. They're artists that bring like different ways to understand the world to our mind, right? They're mathematicians. I mean, it's everything. These are real potential missed contributions to our world and how we understand it. Or they're right. So they're either trying to do all of that and manage the child care schedule or the adult care schedule or whoever's getting care, or they're leaving to do it. And that, oh, bless you. Um, bless
thank
you.
you.
And that has real consequences to how we end up as a country. I want to bring in, I feel like that relates so much to this really important book that it's been 10 years since you published on the age of dignity, preparing for the elder boom in a changing America. Um, you kind of gave some, again, like evidence-based scenarios, right, of where we are headed. And I wonder if you could reflect a little on when you were writing it, what you were thinking about and where we are now. Like, were you right? Were you wrong? What is different? What does it tell you about the next 10 years,
Yeah,
basically?
yeah. Well, the book basically tries to argue that the aging of our country, the fact that we are aging and have such a large and growing aging population in our country, is actually an opportunity. Um,
Mm,
and it's an opportunity to rethink, to reimagine our caregiving systems for the next era. And it's really long overdue. I mean, as I was doing my research for the book, I was shocked at just how inefficient and outdated our approach to care really is. And it's almost like it's an entire complex system that exists in a different era of society, and we're kind of twisting ourselves into pretzels trying to make it work, and it's just frankly too much. And the thing that we forget is that aging is living. It's a good
yes.
thing. It's an
Yeah.
opportunity, and all we need to live well as we live longer is more infrastructure and supports when it comes to caregiving, and that's also an opportunity because these jobs are currently unsustainable jobs, where workers earn poverty wages to care for the people we love and therefore can't take care of the people they love. And it's a cycle of poverty and turnover, right? It's
Right.
just kind of like and it has impact on the quality of care that
Right.
families can receive. And so it's kind of like every aspect of the cycle is breaking down and has been for a long time. And it's completely unaffordable. I mean, most people in our country make less than $60,000 per year. And the average cost of childcare now is 11K a year. Average cost of a nursing home room is about 100K a year. I mean, the numbers just don't add up. And so
Yeah.
the book was saying, hey, this is an opportunity to update all of these things to create good jobs, to make care more affordable, to take the load off of family caregivers who are just struggling right now, and to ensure that people we love have a dignified quality of life and children
Yeah.
have opportunity. And so that's the argument. Now, I think what happened, which was really big since the book came out, is COVID.
Yeah.
And we were all up to our eyeballs in the care crisis in a whole new way. And I think it really illuminated how impossible it is to hold it all as individual families alone. That
Yeah.
the kind of systems and programmatic architecture that government provides and that policies provide is just so essential when it comes to something at the scope and scale of how we care for our loved ones in this country. There's no way to kind of there's no kind of little little tweaks and little innovations around the edges are not going to do it. We really do need to invest in these systems and programs in a different way, and I think a lot of us awakened to that. I mean, I followed so many moms who were just tearing their hair out trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to make it work.
Well, right. And you would see, I don't know if you remember this from the pandemic, but emails that would come back that would say, my work hours may not be your work hours. And for most of those people, when I would see them and just knowing my own friends, it was because they were caring during the day
That's right.
for adult, for a family in whatever age group, and then working at night, which is just truly um, bananas. I mean, it's bananas is the technical term, but it's also, it's not sustainable and there's no quality in any direction when you're stretched that thin, right? Like nothing is good. Your
It's
work
not,
isn't
no.
good. Your way you're with your family is crappy. Like no one feels good about that.
That's right. There's no winning in that
Right.
scenario.
That's
And
right.
I think enough of us realized if this many of us are not winning,
Yeah,
something's broken.
that's right. Yeah, it isn't because we're having too much avocado toast or Starbucks, right? It's like there's a systemic problem. And really, there's a systemic problem when it's also a problem up and down the income spectrum from
Yes,
the
that's the
needing
other
the
thing.
service side, right? Like if high income people are struggling with both quality and cost, then it isn't just then there's a real mismatch of the market is failing, I guess is what I'm trying to say here, right? This is not an okay thing for anyone at this point.
Right, right. And if this were a problem that the market could solve, it would have already. And so we need a different kind of intervention.
Yeah. And are there lessons you've learned in keeping with our theme from the beginning of what is happening internationally? That's really interesting to, sometimes I find that in the US we feel like we're so different that we can't possibly import some great idea from somewhere else because the context matters so much. Um, and that is true to an extent, but the creativity and the way people approached it and how governments are investing and private sectors investing, like that all should inspire us, even if we figure out the right version and how we get it done here.
Yeah.
So I always look to other countries to figure out what's up. What are they doing different from us? And I'm curious what you're seeing in this context in other countries.
Well, I remember I heard Justin Trudeau speak in April of last year, and he said that no one pays more than $10 per day for childcare, that they've capped the cost of childcare at $10 per day, and I almost passed out.
Yeah, you must have almost fainted. That's wild.
I
Wild.
was like, I'm sorry, what?
Am I good here? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's such a simple, elegant solution. And it just goes to show also, I remember thinking this when the child tax credit basically lifted half of
Yeah.
kids out of poverty. It's like policy works,
Right.
that you can change lives through changing policy. And wow, if we had capped the cost of childcare at $10 per day in this country, just imagine the numbers of people just like on your block, whose life
Yeah.
would be transformed.
Yeah.
It's really quite extraordinary. And I remember following up with some Canadians afterwards and being like, yeah, it must be kind of like the quality of the centers are terrible and something must be broken there. And they're like, it's actually pretty good. You know,
You're like, this is a lie. It can't possibly be true.
this can't possibly, yeah, this has to be some kind of ruse. But no, it's not. It totally works. So Canada's got
Yeah.
that going on. UK has a national long-term care system that's connected to their national health care system.
Okay.
So most developed nation. Oh, here's one thing. The UK has paid parental leave of a year.
Wow.
You know how many weeks we have here nationally? 0 weeks.
None. Yeah. Yeah.
Zero. Um, let's see. I think people are having a little bit of a hard time hearing me.
So
Are you having an okay time hearing me?
I am okay, but I did see that come through.
Okay.
Testing, testing.
Testing, testing.
Um,
Okay.
in these models internationally, is it just so we can, get into a little bit of the technical details? Oh, good. We're good. Tell people are telling us we can hear. Thank you, friends. We
Okay,
appreciate
thank
the
you.
feedback. Um, Rachel, we still want to make sure you hear, even if it's just you. Um, is it fully government subsidized? Are there any countries that are doing public-private investments? Like how are you seeing it different in different places, or are countries really saying we view this as an essential, like a foundational policy for our economy?
They are viewing it as a foundational
Okay,
policy, and the tax base is different
right,
because, right, people in other countries pay more in taxes so that they can have this kind of care policy and system
right.
in place. And we should consider something like that too.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it really makes sense to have the things that we collectively contribute to be things like care that benefit us all.
Yeah, to see care like education, like security, put like thinking about police, fire department, just ways that we are all looking out for each other and protecting each other. Care certainly fits into that context. Um, I want to kind of switch to a little bit of a more macro way to think about this. We've been doing work at FSP, really starting to look at what has been economic policy in this country over the decades. Um, that has led us to this place with so many financially insecure families, right? That just really is not the kind of policy currently that is generating widespread prosperity on the household balance sheet, which is how we look at, are you better off, Ai-jen, right? Like, do you have more wealth? Do you have less debt? Can
Yep.
you make choices for your family because you have those kinds of resources? Um, and I'm curious if you think about like, this is really getting at where helps us get through where we just got to, and it may be what is your idea of how to solve this, but how would the care economy need to function in a bigger economic set of policies so that we have an economy that actually ends up with household thriving?
Hmm. Well, so, I think about this almost like during the New Deal, when we put a set of policies into place that are almost the foundation of our social contract, from our nation's labor laws that created the right to minimum wage,
Hmm.
Fair Labor Standards Act, to the Social Security Act. And then we kind of built a few Medicare. Next year is going to be, or this year is the 60th anniversary of Medicare, Medicaid. And so we have this agreement with each other and the country that there will be a certain set of needs that will be taken care of and that we're all going to contribute to realizing that foundation. And um, and I think that we need to update it specifically when it comes to care because our economy has changed so much. The vast majority of households, every working age adult in that household has to work in order to pay the bills.
Right.
And we're living longer. So you have more need for care on every end of the generational spectrum, and increased pressure on working age adults who are also in the thick of caregiving. And so we just need a new pillar of our social contract to enable us to afford and have access to good care. And so I think that if we thought about it the way that we think about Social Security as kind of a foundational policy, it would really enable a huge transformation in generational wealth building. I mean, just long-term care alone, the fact that we don't have a long-term care program in this country,
Yeah,
a lot of us think that Medicare covers long-term care until we realize it doesn't.
right.
And then, so if you can't afford to pay out of pocket for long-term care, which most Americans, vast majority can't,
Hmm.
it means you have to spend down all of your assets in order to be eligible for Medicaid. It is one of the biggest drivers of inequality that nobody talks about. It makes it impossible for people who need care to transfer any wealth to future generations.
Right.
And it exacerbates every kind of wealth inequality in our country, gender, race. And so just thinking about that alone, now, not even talking about childcare. Childcare
Yeah.
is such an enabling factor, as we talked about before. If we were able to offer affordable quality childcare to every family, every working family who needs it, it would be transformational in terms of people truly feeling like they have freedom to contribute and pursue their aspirations in the workforce.
So do you imagine in its like most realized version that you could imagine for the US, where this is part of our economic policy, is the care policy
Yeah.
inside of it? Um, is it like Social Security where you're getting regular payments, or is it like a voucher like we do for housing, but actually where everyone can get it as opposed to the limited number of vouchers we have for affordable housing? Like, what is the way you see this getting to Americans?
Well, I do see it like Social Security in that I think it would be a really powerful social insurance
Hmm.
based model where we're all, from the time we begin working, we're all contributing to a fund.
Okay.
It helps us afford childcare, paid leave, and aging and disability care. And so we'll need different forms of care at different times, and that fund will be able to draw from to help us afford it. And social insurance really does work best when you have a large risk pool.
A
And
huge set of people paying in. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
would be the largest risk pool in history. So I think it's really well suited for a social insurance model. And I like the idea of a voucher because it creates some flexibility.
Yeah. About like where and how you use it. Um, This is just making me think of some of the really exciting innovations happening at states that I'm sure you're watching, and I'm wondering what you can share with folks again in the um, not just in the spirit of hope, but in the spirit of progress, right? We're not just hopeful, we're making some progress here. I think about Washington's, they're launching or have launched their long-term care state plan, and many states have not enough, but we're growing in the number of states that are doing paid leave. So I'm wondering if there are the innovation space of states, like how exciting is that for you? Are there states that everyone who's listening in should be watching?
It's incredibly exciting. I mean, the Washington State long-term care program, it's called WA Cares, and it just went into effect in July.
Okay.
So people are contributing now and able. Phew!
Bless you.
It's a sign that spring is coming. I hope.
It is, which is also hopeful and beautiful and amazing.
Yes. It's it's a thing that everyone said wouldn't work. And it was on the, in fact, there were these powerful interests who were trying to defund the program even before it could get started. And there was a ballot initiative on the ballot in November to try to basically take it away.
Yeah,
And voters overwhelmingly voted to keep it in place.
amazing.
It's it's a it's the perfect example of how actually people do understand that investing in programs like care programs are
Yeah.
really an investment in their future, and people want to invest in their future. And so I think that that's very inspiring. That's the first long-term care social insurance program in the country. There are 15 states that have passed paid leave programs, and that is very exciting, including Missouri just passed a paid sick leave ballot initiative in November, which is incredibly exciting, alongside a raise in the minimum wage and so popular. And so we know these policies really speak to people's
Yeah.
bottom line needs, and it's a topic of conversation at every kitchen table. And I feel like what we're going to learn from these 15 states that have already implemented paid leave is going to be, we're going to have so much data about what our national program should look like. And that part of it is absolutely exciting. I mean, states are the laboratory,
Yeah.
and they should give us hope.
My state, I live in Maryland, has just launched it, about to launch it. I'm trying to remember, but for paid leave. And I'll shout out Elliot Schur, partner of FSP, and he's been doing all the work to get that really into the market for Marylanders, and it's amazing and exciting. Um, it makes me wonder, Ai-jen, just your thought on this. It is so interesting, right? That like states, it's almost what is predictable is that states will pass these things almost at this point, right?
Uh,
Because it is really popular. It doesn't feel capital P political at the local level. It feels like, of course, that's what we need. Of course, that's what I expect my state government to do for me. I'm happy that my taxes are used this way. I'm happy that you're doing it. And lots of these models are public-private and take advantage of the strengths of different sectors. Um, and it's remarkable, when you look at the outcome of the elections and then see where really innovative, maybe even thought of as progressive policies are passed. One, do you think my observation is correct? Like, am I seeing it the way you see it and all the organizing you do? And second, what is your diagnosis then of why we can't do it at the federal level? Like, what is the disconnect between people, it being quite popular and people trusting state government and us not quite getting yet to a place where we can get federal infrastructure?
I totally agree that these issues are incredibly popular. There is literally not a kitchen table in the country where people aren't talking about these issues. And the second people realize there's actually a solution, that this is not like inevitable, that we have to suffer in this
Right.
way.
Like, it doesn't have to be this hard.
It
That's what's
doesn't
so
have to be this.
sucky, right?
Right,
It doesn't have to
right,
be this way. Yeah.
right. Right. Anybody who realizes that will support these policies and vote for them. And that has been proven true. In terms of why we can't get there at the federal level, I ask myself this question all the time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it is that we as everyday people haven't seen ourselves as a part of a constituency together
Mm,
that can actually project power and an identity as a constituency in a way that elected officials who take a bold step on
yeah.
on designing a new program or putting a new program out there at the federal level feels like they have the kind of wind at their back, right? And that is, I think, it's really what I've been working on for, 26, 7 years now, is trying to create that energy and that sense of a shared, basically what we call it, the caring majority, but to
Yeah.
build a movement that really connects us all around these experiences that are so universal, needs that are so universal, at a time when we are quite divided as a country. These very important experiences and roles and needs in our lives can unite us towards positive change. And so I believe in that project, and I believe that it is possible to create a majoritarian movement in this country to get these solutions in place.
Yeah.
And I believe that we are the generation that's going to do it. And And so we just have to build. We have to build and build like we can win.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. And it leads me to my next question, which is, so much of your work, I mean, is around organizing, right? In all different kinds of ways. Um, and to do what you're describing for all of us, for us to be part of a caring majority, which I love. These are going to be, multiracial, multi-gender, multi-sector
Yes.
coalitions. And what is your experience telling you about how to do that or where you've had success with that? Again, in the spirit of not just hope, but we have examples like we can make this happen. Our lives do not inevitably need to be this hard. Our neighbors' lives or families' lives could actually be opposite this, what is happening out there in that kind of truly bigger umbrella kind of organizing that you think has been successful?
Oh, so much. There's so much activity happening all over this country. At the federal level in COVID, we formed a coalition called Care Can't Wait
Hmm.
that brings together childcare advocates, moms, parents, childcare providers, everyone who has a stake in affordable childcare. Um, all the paid leave advocates who have a coalition called Paid Leave for All, but it includes National Partnership for Women and Families and Moms Rising and all kinds of organizations. And then all the groups who care about seniors and people with disabilities and access to care, especially in the home and in the
Yeah.
community.
Yep.
Together with all the unions, we formed this big coalition, and we were really successful in one. We were told that it's too much to try to put it all together, but we said this is one story about the care that families need, and we need different of these policies at different times in our lives, and sometimes we need multiple at the same time, and it's not like they're interchangeable.
Right. Right.
They're part of a vision for how we would be supported when it comes to caring for our loved ones in
Yeah.
our country. And so we decided to keep fighting together, and we got huge investments in across the finish line in the American Rescue Plan to stabilize childcare, to invest in home and community-based services for older people and people with disabilities, and temporary paid leave policies in place. So we saw the power of the agenda coming together and all of the people who can be united behind the agenda.
Yeah.
And that same coalition is coming together in states, which is
Amazing.
really exciting because in state budgets, everyone's always pitted against each other.
Yes.
Uh,
That's right.
and this is our moment to say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to work
Yeah.
together and push together for whatever policy progress can be made at the state level together. And I feel excited about what's happening in Michigan, in California, in Illinois, in Georgia, where we were
Nice.
able to get a wage increase for home care workers in the governor's budget last year.
That's amazing.
Huge,
I
huge.
mean, that's just truly is life-changing. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, we're going.
Yeah.
We're not gonna stop. We're gonna keep going. And someday universal family care will be on the agenda.
Well, I think I mean, I don't think I know, one of the reasons that we needed care to be part of a conversation around women in the economy and the work that I do around wealth building, because it is so intersectional. And when I look at the folks who were on who said where they were from, thank you, everyone. If you haven't said who you are and where you're from, Ai-jen and I would love to know. Um, they're all from, many are from organizations that focus on wealth. And so my hope is that we are part of this too. Like
Yes,
we're all doing the same things. And this is I remember I took a parenting class when my children were small. And one of the things they taught us is like, what is the needs of the situation? Like what is the primary thing you need to deal with right now? And in this case, for our country's economy to thrive and for families to have some real financial security, a priority need of the situation is getting this right, right?
that's exactly. And when we do, it's like I always my friend Larry Katz, who's an economist at Harvard, talks about care investments being these triple dignity investments.
Mm,
Because when you invest in, for example, making a home care job a living wage job, that not only benefits that worker and her family and community, but it also benefits the working family caregiver who is enabled to work and participate more sustainably in the workforce because she or he has caregiving support. And it enables a dignified quality of life for the older person or the person with a disability that they support, or the child, right? Nurturing the potential of the child. Like, these, talk about a win-win-win investment. You really could not get a more, what is that called? Like a lot of bang for your buck, but I don't
yep.
think that that's exactly.
I understand, Rigor. I think of that
You
as
know what I'm saying?
like a super vitamin. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
there you
a
go.
we watch a lot of Marvel in my house, and so it's like a serum. You know, it's like the exact serum this country needs right now for a sustainably thriving, inclusive economy is having the care majority kind of policies. I'm going to ask a couple questions that have come in from the crowd. Please feel free to post some more, everyone. Um, One is, can you just, oh, okay. This is a great question. We haven't quite hit on it yet, but just wondering about labor market discrimination in the care economy and ideas around solutions, or just let's acknowledge it, you know, and share a little bit more about what's happening there.
Well, yes. First of all, in care, these are jobs that have always overwhelmingly been held by women, and majority and disproportionately women of color. And it's the classic occupational segregation
Yep.
example where there's a reinforcing cultural set of cultural norms that have basically relegated care work to women, and therefore tracked women into those positions and then kept them segregated and unequal, um, and therefore have only been really a occupation for low income women and women of color. And when you're in that profession, if you choose to stay in it, you're really choosing a life of poverty because the
Yeah.
wages are terribly low. The median income of a home care worker is $23,000 per year in our country. And I know a lot of caregivers who leave the profession, even though they think it's their calling,
Mm,
for jobs in manufacturing or retail or fast food because they pay more.
yeah.
And so that's the reality. And even within care, there's kind of layers. So the more certification and the way, the more if you're seen as more skilled, so closer to nursing um, degrees and such, the more men you'll see, uh,
Yeah.
and the more white people you'll see. And so it's kind of a mirror of our entire labor market in terms of the racial and gender nature of things, how race and gender structure our labor market. And then, yeah, there's discrimination based on age, based on race, based on immigration, based on language, that happens within the workforce. And because you're often isolated doing this work, there's just a high degree of vulnerability to
Right.
abuses. And there's no water cooler where you can go and get support from your colleagues. There's no HR department, you're just kind of
Yeah. I
out
mean,
there.
there's no even kind of asking your coworkers what do they make. You know, there's no really way to get knowledge about your field when you're working by yourself in a home. I mean, you're with someone, but you're caring for them and you're not around other caregivers all the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. We have a question related to the conversation we were having a little bit ago about why can't we get this at the federal level when really cool things are happening at states, and people, all kinds of people seem to want it. Um, which is, curiosity around who's pushing back against these kinds of care focused, what did you say, the caring majority sets of policies. And I am now using my moderator's privilege to specifically ask, I'm curious where private sector is fitting in on the, and I'm sure it's not, I'm sure it's heterogeneous how they're in, but I'm curious about that too and thinking about them as allies or partners.
Yeah, I think that they should be natural partners because having a strong set of care policies to support the workforce as a whole, I think only supports productivity and workforce retention and all kinds of good things for employers.
Yeah.
And so we have seen them as potential allies and believe that they are natural allies. And during the last few years, when we were pushing for an investment in care in a budget reconciliation bill that eventually became the Inflation Reduction Act during the
Hmm.
Biden Harris administration, um, what we found was the pushback was really having to do with the cost of
Okay.
these programs. And the thing that I find interesting about that is it's already so costly.
Right.
We are paying so much money for care individually. It's just we're doing it in such inefficient and ineffective ways.
Yeah.
And if we would just be willing to pay a little bit more in taxes and actually I'll take that back. If we were willing to push for very wealthy people, billionaires and corporations to actually pay a fair tax rate, then we would actually be able to afford these programs. And it wouldn't bring up the deficit and create all these other problems. We could actually make programs like Medicare and Social Security forever sustainable if we
Yeah.
had a different tax system that was more fair. And so I think that that is the question of cost is really kind of a trick question,
Yeah.
I find. And we're never looking at it through the lens of what is the cost, both financially and at the human level, for individual families who are struggling to afford care right now.
I mean, I also just think of what is the cost of inaction and continuing to do this way, and not even necessarily to my individual household or my neighbors or someone else's, but um, this inefficient system is costing our country's potential economic growth. And, so there's a certain amount of waste, lowercase w, but that's already happening and lost potential by not doing something more systemic that I suspect even the investment of the government, which will be seen as a new cost, we would gain so much more, right? And both individuals' abilities to manage their lives, need less from the government, et cetera, and for our own economy to thrive when we've made this investment. I think we see that in other countries.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Like the downstream benefits in terms of our financial health and well-being individually and collectively as a country are just enormous.
They're
I
just
mean,
enormous. Yeah. And we're just missing them. We're leaving them on the table or whatever that phrase is that I'm not very good at. Um, we have one more question that I might ask you to answer briefly, only because then we have to wrap up and I want to ask you my closing question. But I think it's a really, oh, there's another one. Oh, no. Okay. So many good questions, everyone. I'm so sorry. Um, there's a question of why is care or the lack thereof seen primarily as a women's issue rather than an economic one? And I guess you can certainly answer that. And another way to maybe answer it is, do you think in states where they've passed good care policy, they've changed it? Or is it just, like have they been successful at getting it seen as more of an economic issue? So I'm just answer however you want, but that's kind of my curious spin on it too.
yeah, I think that this is an area where we're actually making a lot of progress. During the Biden-Harris administration, they put care at the center of their economic agenda, not the women's agenda, the economic agenda. And that was a really important breakthrough. It was historic, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think that that opened the door for us to really cement and establish these policies as economic policies and priorities. And they will disproportionately benefit women and communities of color, I'm sure. And they benefit everyone in profound ways. And that's what I love about these policies. They are just so very practical and so universally needed and beloved. Um,
Yeah.
I think that that's what we need right now. And in states, here's what I'll say is that because it's been for so long women who have championed progress on this front, um, who have both carried a lot of the load of caregiving and championed the change. I think that one of the things that we need to do is really highlight the many men,
Yeah.
36% of men, or 36% of family caregivers for older adults and people with disabilities are men.
Hmm. Okay.
They're particularly invisible and
Yeah.
they face
Yeah.
unique challenges like what it means to ask for help and where to go for help and what it looks like to build a community around caregiving. I just had a conversation with a youth caregiver last week who was saying that she developed anorexia because of the isolation of being a youth caregiver who was not like anybody else
Hmm.
she was growing up with at a
Yeah.
crucial coming of age time. And there are a lot of young men who are youth caregivers, and there are
Interesting.
a lot of older men who feel that type of isolation in the experience of care. And culturally, we have not created the space or the language to welcome them and uplift them in the caring majority. And that is, I think, a big part of what we've got to do is create the space for the young caregivers, the older caregivers, the men, the people who just are in the shadows of what
Yeah.
the traditional notion of caregiving is, so that people can see themselves inside of this vision.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to explicitly actually invite all of us who are on this call to be responsible for that. I talk about care all the time in the context of this work, and how am I much more thoughtful and nuanced about kind of the everyone inside of it. So I appreciate that. I am going to sadly close out our hour because I feel like I want to talk to you all day. I also feel like you have important things you're doing when you're not on the phone with me or on the Zoom with me. So both those things are in tension. Um, but I read something. I am like a middle-aged lady who gets like now too many things on Instagram that are like, you know, things for middle
Menopause.
quotes for middle-aged ladies, things that will motivate me, whatever. And mostly I'm like, oh, how do you know how old I am? But there was one recently that I actually thought was really great, talking about how, just because something is breaking or purposely being broken, you don't have to repair that thing. You can actually build something more glorious in its place. And that is motivating me right now in thinking about the time, the sort of really historic moment we're in our country, and the ambition and creativity we all should be having about not just, I think you said this earlier, like tinkering around the edges and band-aiding the problems, but what's the real thing? What is the real way we all get to live? So I'd love for you to leave us with like, what's on your mind about the real way we get to live, and that's giving you kind of the motivation and the daily hope and the drive to keep your peace so you get to make this thing happen.
Yeah. Well, I really want to recommend to everyone, which is something that I'm trying to do, to spend like a third of your time. And if you think about your day of working, problem solving, doing the thing, a third of that time, spending it in planting seeds for the future and
Mm,
seeding the care vision that you have for your family, your community, for the country, like what seeds can you plant today that help pave the way
Yeah.
for a, you know, a future where nobody spends more than $10 per day on childcare? Or how about free childcare? Um, what about what can I do today that makes um, the idea that every single person who's working in the care economy could have a job where they could build wealth and create a better set of opportunities and choices for themselves and their future children and loved ones of future generations, like that kind of future is possible. We have been planting seeds for this idea of a new social insurance fund that would help us all pay for our care needs over our lifespans for over a decade now. And some of those seeds are like, yeah, little sprouts,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. They are. The sprouts are the states,
Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
yeah. And I ran into Sherilyn Eiffel in December, and she said, the thing that my ancestors always remind me is that there are many seasons in life. There are seasons to plant, there are seasons to reap and sow, and we are also, as we are kind of doing our best to protect essential programs like Medicaid, we're also in a planting season.
Yeah. Great. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Truly, thank you for your work, and for all the ways that you lead us in these really important areas. Um, and there's so many links for everyone who wants to learn more about Ai-jen's work. And I was just snooping around all of her many places yesterday and this morning, and many ways to get involved. So please remember that this care work is essential part of our wealth work. And thank you, Ai-jen, so much. I just want to remind everyone, and I think it was in the chat, that we have another one. Wait, we had three before, or this is our third. Oh my gosh. We have our fourth or fifth. I can't believe I'm forgetting now. I just gave you guys the number in the beginning. Fourth, thank you. We have our fourth installment of this series happening in May 15th to be exact. Let me make sure I said that right. I thought I circled it May 15th at 1 p.m. Oh, this one's going to be also amazing with Caroline Hyde of Bloomberg TV and other tech leaders, where we'll be talking about generative AI on women in the economy. So that is going to be exciting. Please sign up for it, and please give us your feedback when we send you the email about what was great about this for you, what we can do better, what other topics are on your mind, and join the caring majority movement. It's a great place to be. It's an important place to be. Thanks, everyone. Have a really great afternoon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.